along the edge of the Rift Valley in the Loida Hills with a Maasai. 15 or so years ago. Larson, Chandler, Jay, me, and 3 or 4 other friends. It's a place I used to travel, and we hooked up with some Maasai friends of mine. We bought a goat, and we headed off into the Loida Hills. First night's camp was the spring camp, which is along the edge of a marsh where in the rainy season there are hippo. And so we camped near the spring. And being the first night out, the food for the evening was the goat. So the Maasai they cut the goat's throat, made a flap from the flap of the skin in the throat. They collected the blood, and that was part of their ritual. And so they had blood for dinner, and then they butchered part of the goat, and we roasted part of the goat for dinner. And then we all bedded down, and then it rained like hell. And there we are. We had 3 or 4 tents set up. Larson and Chandler were in one tent. The Maasai were out there covered up in little polyester wraps. And the goat what was left of the goat was hanging from a nearby tree. And just as we were getting to sleep, we hear this, and my buddy Paul in the next tent says, "What is that?" "Paul, it's a lion." "What do we do?" So I conferred with my partner Rob in our tent. We decided we'll move a little closer to the fire. I shouted to Paul, "We'll move a little closer to the fire." Rob and I were in a dome tent. You pull up 3 stakes and you pick up the tent and you move it. And Paul and his partner David White were in a pup tent, had about 45 tie downs on it. So when I said, "Paul, we're going to move a little closer to the fire," he said, "That's going to be a problem." There was a moment of pause, and he says, "We're on it." And so we moved our tents closer to the fire, went back to sleep, and all was well. Chandler and Larson did not even wake up through this whole event. They didn't hear the lions. They had to hear the news the next day. I'm not sure what that means,
Right.
but they were sound sleepers. And the other Larson story that I think is perhaps more interesting is when Jay and Larson and I took a hike to Lion's Head, north of Vancouver. It was reported to be a day hike, and we started off sometime in the morning and went up to Lion's Head. We don't think we had maps. Jay knew the way. He'd been there some years before. And we circumnavigated Lion's Head after we hit it. Instead of coming back down the main trail, we went around the backside and we're coming down a trail that Jay remembered. Well, it had been 15 years or so since Jay had been there, and that trail had disappeared. You were coming down a drainage that had been totally overgrown, and it was getting dark, and we were going to miss dinner, and also probably have the RCMP out looking for us. And we looked and looked and tried to find a trail, and it was Larson who slowed down enough to look around and notice that in this thicket there were parts of it that were less thick. There were remnants of a trail there, and he found it. And we walked down the remnant of the trail, got out still after dark, but we didn't have the RCMP looking for us. So that's what I remember of Larson and his sensitivity to where he is and his environment. Is, I think, being able to step back and see what's there without carrying any baggage into the picture. And he found this bit of a possible trail, and we walked out on it.